everybody. Welcome into episode 137 here on this July the 2nd of 2024. We are over halfway done with 2024. And of course, since it's early July, that means it is 4th of July week here in the United States. So happy birthday to the United States of America. It turns 248 on Thursday, 248 years since the Declaration of Independence was signed in Philadelphia. I'm Nick as always from Chattanooga, Tennessee of these United States, and joining me from Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil is Gus Tomazeli. Gus, how are you doing on this July night?
Doing good, doing good. I miss those July 4th, long weekends, especially in the summer, because now in Brazil is, our winter, which is, I'll say, like a late October, early November kind of feeling for cold, but which for us is cold, but for Americans is chilly at best. But I'm doing good. Yeah, July also. Not only America's birthday is my birthday too in about 2 weeks. So yeah, great month, and of course let's get to some sports talk and start with. Let's do a little different. Start with Brazilian topics because we had some breaking news today. Corinthians. Oh my God, Corinthians fire the second head coach in this season. Antonio Oliveira out after losing the rivalry game against Palmeiras at Palmeiras Stadium 2-0. First half was decent, but they couldn't resist, and 2-0. I knew the Corinthians would lose. I was even talking to a friend of mine the day of the game, and I was like, and he was going to the game, and I was like, yeah, it's gonna be 2-0, even 3-0. So Corinthians lost another game, is second to last in the relegation zone. Only one win with six losses, and the only game Corinthians won was against the last place Fluminense. So things look terrible for Corinthians. A lot of political turmoil because the president who was elected last year and was inaugurated in January is feels like all over the place. Lost sponsors. Is involved in a corruption scandal allegedly. So yeah, Corinthians is in a really big turmoil, in a chaos right now.
So basically, he's their John Curry.
He'll be Butch Jones. Butch Jones, I guess. The John Kerry's Fabinho Soldado, the football director, is still has a job, but I don't know for how long. But he still has a job. And Corinthians actually hired new CEO, Fred Lucio, which worked for Flamengo a couple of years ago. But I don't know how much this is gonna work because Corinthians is in a big amount of debt, in almost, I'll say, 400 to 500 million dollars in debt. Is having difficulties paying salaries. Can hire, can go to the free agency to get new good players. So I Corinthians situation is really bad.
Oh yeah, it as you've been documenting all season, it's almost starting to feel like early onset, Santos
Y- y- But
from a
but
year or two ago.
but yeah, that's a good. But the thing is, I mean, Santos, of course, a very traditional team with a lot of history, big titles, no question. But Santos, like pressure is smaller compared to Corinthians because Santos located in a smaller city. Does not have the pressure and the intensity and the kind of the surroundings that are Corinthians. Like Corinthians fans are passionate, and the Corinthians like supporter groups have a lot of influence politically in the club. Allegedly, they are involved with some mafias, so in the city.
Ooh, so this
So
is like old school, like American style, like style sports, or like those hooligans over in England.
yeah, I'll say yeah. It's kind of compared to the hooliganism England had, the hardcore 70s and 80s. Still, Brazil has some issues about that, and unlike England, I feel in Brazil they are really deep into the politics of the club because remember, Nick, Brazilian soccer clubs are not private owned entities like in the United States of America, where a club has an owner. In Brazil, they're starting to do that with the SAFs, but only a few have owners or ownership groups. Botafogo, Cruzeiro, Cuiabá, and uh, until like last month Vasco, but because of a judge decision, the ownership group 777 Partners are not in charge anymore. But of course, they appealed and they did not made a ruling disappealing verdict. But and Corinthians, like one of the leaders of one of the biggest Corinthians supporter groups, uh, gave an interview that really frightened me because he said that Corinthians will never have an owner or ownership group because Corinthians belongs to the people and is a popular club. But this is a empty statement. Of course Corinthians is a popular team with a lot of fans, but so does the Dallas Cowboys, and the Dallas Cowboys has an owner. But as much as you may disagree or question Jerry Jones' decisions, people still love the club and still have a connection to the club. And he, as the best of his decisions, tries to run the club the best possible because because if the club has financial troubles, he's in trouble because he's the owner. And unfortunately, Corinthians is run as like a city or like a country with only elections and political groups.
What's interesting about that is what would this guy do if someone bought Corinthians? Like, is he going to try to rebel? I mean, obviously we saw what happened when we tried to hire Shiano in Knoxville, but like, that's small potatoes to object into who someone buying an entire
But
team.
but the thing is, for Corinthians to be able to be sold, the the the, the Corinthians council would have to made a change uh, in their i- i- in their rules in their I don't even know the word of it. Their laws or the guidelines of the club guidelines. They'll have to change the guidelines, the thing that rules the club to be able to like, hey, now we are for sale. So Corinthians not even for sale. They would have because I saw with Rio Branco, like Rio Branco had a voting with the people who are like like partners or even like myself or had a share a minority share, not even a share, like you it's like a country club, like you have a membership, like so the members who had memberships of Rio Branco had a voting and like say, hey, Rio Branco can become a business entity and can be public available for selling of shares. So Rebronco's in like probably in the final process of that, and in probably in 1 or 2 years, Rebronco might have an owner. But Corinthians not even went to the number one point, which is the members of Corinthians with memberships of Corinthians as a club to vote to approve the change for Corinthians to be able to become a business or entity to be public available for selling their shares and having an owner.
Man, that's going to be a very, very messy situation whenever that time comes because it's inevitable, I think, as Brazilian soccer continues to modernize, that every club's going to have to face this decision. And shout out to Canal do Barbudo says, "Hey, good night."
Oh, my big friend, Carnaldo Barbudo. He's one of the upcoming uh, broadcasters in America. Now, he's only 16 years old, but he's been broadcasting Real Bronco games in his YouTube channel, covering Real Bronco, going to press conferences. He's probably doing one of the best, if not the best, coverage of Real Bronco this season. And he's only 16 years old, and he has his partners in broadcasting have like 14, 13, and 12 years old. So they are kind of the academy of broadcasting. They are they're because in Brazil, unlike America, their school does not have like a school radio or something, and they are trying themselves to learn broadcasting, to learn how to cover sports, with their YouTube channel, and they're doing a really good job.
Man, that's amazing to hear. Shout out to you guys. Keep on doing the good work. And also, I tell you can speak some English or at least type some English out, which is also really good. Definitely keep on plugging away learning that as well.
Yeah, yeah. He goes to a bilingual school. That is a really one of the best schools in Americana. So he knows a thing or two, and I always give him some advices and whatnot, and try to guide him into this world of broadcasting and sports journalism, which, as you know, is not easy, but sometimes is rewarding.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, for you, I do news journalism, and that's even a trickier world than
Yeah.
sports journalism, as you have seen, Gus, over the past couple of days here in the great city of
Oh,
Chattanooga. Some
yeah.
s-
It's so funny. I watch your reels that you post on Instagram. Is animals, women shouting. What else?
I mean, I went from our district attorney calling out a group of black pastors for quote unquote race baiting to today posing today with a miniature horse.
Yeah. So news journalism takes you to all kinds of experience. That's
Absolutely.
Yeah, but just to wrap up the our local soccer with, of course, Rio Branco. Speaking of Barbuda, so Rio Branco had a good win over Red Bull Bragantino second team, not the Rio Bragantino played in the Brazilian first division, tie 1-1. They are in ninth place, but the second team they play with under 23 players. They like officially on paper it's the Rio Red Bull Bragantino, but they play the Paulista Cup with under 23 players, and Rio Branco beat them 2-1. Second win in Paulista Cup in 3 games. Won both games at home. They are in the first place in Group 4, so it's doing a good job, because remember, Rio Branco was in the lowest division in the state compared to the other 4 teams in this Paulista Cup, group stage. They have you have Capivariano and São Bento and Primavera. They were in second division in the state of São Paulo. There's Bragantino second team, under 23 team in third division in the state, and Rio Branco was just now promoted to the third division in the state of São Paulo, was the champions of the fourth division. So, so far, promising start of Rio Branco in Paulista Cup.
Yeah, super impressive, and you're beating a team of academy players too. So like that's a great start. Keep it up, and
Yeah.
hopefully we can maybe you guys can make that national tournament.
Yeah, yeah, it's one game at a time. Sunday is going to be the biggest challenge so far this season. It's the probably going to be the biggest challenge, this season, even from A4, because São Bento is an organized team. They were the top seed. They were the top seed in the second division when the regular season finished, but they lost in the playoffs to the 8th seed Noroeste. And I know they lost a lot of players from A2 to second division to the Paulista Cup, but they're still a really hard team to play on the road. So it's going to be a really big challenge for Rio Branco on Sunday morning, 10 a.m. Brazil time, 9 a.m. America time, in
Ugh.
Sorocaba.
I'll be drinking my coffee and watching that.
Yeah, definitely. So, and Barbudo will be there too. So it's gonna be um, hard match, but hopefully Rio Branco. If Rio Branco ties this game, I consider a great result, really great result, because then Rio Branco will be with 7. I even gonna confirm, but Rio Branco is gonna be with 7 points. So it's in a good statement. So I think because Rio Branco right now is in first place with 6 points, and São Bento has 4 points. So if Rio Branco ties, Rio Branco literally stays in the first position, the group four. It will not be surpassed, and so I'll consider a tie on the road a great result.
Absolutely. And Brazil almost just got their second goal of the game, but that was super, super close.
Yeah, on a free kick. So
Yeah.
currently Brazil is tying 1-1 against Colombia. I wouldn't be too worried about this game. Brazil to be eliminated as of right now. Costa Rica, which is winning 2-0 against Paraguay, would have to score now they have scored even more because Paraguay scored. So it's 2-1. So Costa Rica would have to score four more goals to have to win 5-1. And Brazil would have to suffer a goal, like Colombia wins. So Brazil's going to be in the knockout stage. No worries. As of right now, Brazil would have faced Uruguay, which is going to be a really hard challenge. As you saw yesterday, that you talk about United States of America birthday this Thursday, and the national team could not provide a good birthday week present.
No, they just embarrassed the country for the 4th of July. First one, if we're going to the U.S., though, just how do you. I know obviously Brazil got a rough start with a draw against Costa Rica, but they came back with strong points against Paraguay. How do you feel about this Brazilian team heading to the knockout?
I think they're finding their identity. It was a well. It felt like the Paraguay game was like taking take some pressure off their backs. It was like, ooh, we got a good result. We got a convincing result. Of course, Paraguay is not in the best stages. You know, um, recently, but still they got a great result. Of course, with this tie right now, you would be a little bit more skeptical going into the knockout stage. Of course, Brazil wins. They would go to first place and they would pay Panama. In theory, a easier matchup, even though U.S. fans thought the same thing. It did not go well. So I
And just a
think
quick
Brazil.
comment on Paraguay as well, because I remember them being good when I was younger, like 2010.
Oh yeah, the 2010 they went on a historical run in the World Cup. They went to the quarterfinals and only lost 1-0 to Spain, which eventually ended up being the champions. So Paraguay had two great generations. The 1998 one also was eliminated by the champions of the World Cup, France, and then 2010. But then recently, Paraguay did not had a good generation. They failed to qualify, I guess, in the last, I'll say, two World Cups. So they are not having their best generation so far.
Yeah. Well, speaking of generations,
Yeah,
let's let's do the autopsy, Gus,
yeah.
into
Let's
the
do it.
U.S. men's soccer team. Uh, Several years ago, when we learned, because we were still in Knoxville, when we learned the 2026 FIFA World Cup was coming to the U.S. along with Mexico and Canada. We knew we had all these young players such as Christian Pulisic and others, and we were promised by 2026 this U.S. men's soccer team would be in a position to be competitive on the international stage. We are 2 years away from 2026. 2024, it is now. In 2026, it's going to be 250 years since the Declaration of Independence was signed in the United States. Irrelevant to this discussion, but I figure I should point that out when the World Cup comes to the United States. In our last really big national tournament before 2026, that really matters. I don't care about the Gold Cup next year. Like,
Yeah,
who cares? Um, this was a chance for the United States to show, okay, they can compete with some big boys. The group stage seemed easy enough, right? Like, yeah, you've got Uruguay, a really good team, but then you had Bolivia and you had Panama, two teams that you should beat. And you were the United States. They took care of Bolivia in game one, looked fine. But then in Panama, they played just absolutely horrifically stupid soccer, including Tim Way, who, for inexplicable reasons, in the 18th minute got a red card, with just lost his head, lost his cool. Of course, he couldn't play last night against Uruguay because of that. And we end up having to play the rest of that match with 10 men and lose 2-1 to Panama. So now we're in a must win situation last night, and they couldn't get it done. Lost 1-0. And I know a lot of people are complaining about the refs, but the refs aren't responsible for you only getting 3 shots on goal in 90 minutes for no offensive imagination. And ultimately, they just weren't tough enough. And some people are saying, oh, well, they played the Uruguayans hard, they were physical, and all this and that. I don't care about moral victories. We were told this is a golden generation, that the Americans should be able to compete on an international soccer level, and they just aren't anywhere close. And right now, depending on what draw they get, I don't know if they're going to make it out of the group stage in 2 years, Gus. Where do you even start?
Like, first and foremost, and it will be humiliating because the only two hosting nations who could not advance to the group stage were South Africa in 2010, but they had I believe then they had a hard group. They had a really hard draw. I remember in that World Cup. I'm gonna uh, yeah, they had to play Uruguay, Mexico, and France. So
Oh
you know
my
what?
gosh! Wow,
So
that's
so it was justified. It was justified, and they were eliminated by goal differential. Mexico advanced second, Uruguay first, and France was eliminated. So South Africa, even though they were eliminated in the group stage, they did decent. I'll say decent. Because of how hard the group stage were. The other nation was Qatar, and Qatar don't have any soccer culture, nothing. So you know how why Qatar was chose to host the World Cup and stuff, but on the field they just did what everybody expect. Did not play well and were eliminated easily in the group stage. And out comes the United States. And I think you'll be the biggest humiliation to be in this group of hosting nations in the World Cup who could not advance to the knockout stage.
so. How do we avoid that fate? What do we need to do? Is there anything that can be done? Because you can't just go sign players, right? This is a national team.
Yeah.
Um, because you can't undo the years where development clearly has not taken place. Greg Berhalter, he has been the coach of the U.S. off and on since 2018. Has coached the men in 75 separate matches. He has never been a team ranked in the top 25. Unless some people will argue Mexico maybe was at certain points, but outside of that, none. And at no point during that time span have the U.S. ranked highly in offensive attack, offensive tactics. And they're even at points last night when, because, obviously these end of group stage matches took place at the same time. They were aware that Bolivia had tied the game against Panama in Orlando, and that that Berhalter was aware of that and was almost celebrating, like, hey, we can win this now. We can get this through. And seeming to suggest that he had no hope before. Seeming to suggest that he had no faith his team could score because at this point we hadn't scored yet. There was no score. It was 0-0. And the fact that he seemingly was celebrating that just tells me that we don't have a guy at the helm that's instilling confidence to win. We're merely trying to survive.
I feel like one person who was vindicated with those last 7 years, Jurgen Klinsmann. I don't think Klinsmann did a bad job. I think though, for example, that 2014 World Cup U.S. team was competitive. it made noise, and since then it felt like this U.S. team stagnated. Of course, for me, the biggest humiliation, and I argued that on social media back then, and I still think that the biggest humiliation on U.S. sports history took place literally 1 year after Cleveland was fired, which was not qualifying to a World Cup when you play in CONCACAF. That was still, for me, the biggest humiliation U.S. sports history. Nothing would top that. Nothing. Nothing. Not even, probably only if, uh, in U.S. basketball team would have been eliminated in the quarterfinals by maybe some African nation, or even, I don't know, some, as even though it's unjustifiable, and you only had to win, eliminated Trinidad and Tobago. That okay, but then when they then they found strength to go back, especially with Brent Halter had a good World Cup in cycle and could qualify to 2022. Had okay-ish. I don't think was a bad elimination against Netherlands, which is still a very good nation, doing good in the Euros, and was seconds away for going at least to the semis in the World Cup. Was eliminated by Argentina, which eventually being the champions. But right now, you have to go big. I mean, I send you a list of
Mhm.
coaches who were, at least suggested. I saw on a Facebook group of people who followed the U.S. men's national team, and I would go. My top two choices, I told you, would be Joaquin Law, which won the World Cup, because I mean, in U.S. U.S. sports culture, you always try to find at least a coach who won the big tournament. In college football, you try to get a coach who won a national title. Even mid-tier programs, for example, Kansas, why they went on? Why they hired a couple years ago Les Miles, because he won a national title. Um, why now? Why, for example, if some program would try to hire Urban Meyer, even though he's out of college football landscape for quite a while, because he won national titles. So I would go after Joaquin Law. He won a World Cup with Germany. My second choice would be Zinedine Zidane, because he was fairly successful at the biggest soccer club in the world, Real Madrid. Won everything he possibly could, and even more. He he built a dynasty. Winning back Champions League, La Liga, FIFA Club World Cup. Everything. So for me, my top two choices: Joaquin Law and Zinedine Zidane.
I definitely, I think Zidane would excite me more out of those two. Although, but I would be happy with either one. But you got to remember too, when it comes to Lowe as well, he oversaw. Germany had to kind of rebuild themselves after, I believe it was 2006, or they didn't make it out of the group stage,
No,
and they kind of had to.
2018. Literally the World Cup after they won it all. They were
Well,
eliminated.
I'm talking about the build up to 2014, because they kind of had to
Ah,
rebuild them
oh
back.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, in 2006 they went all the way to the semis as a hosting nation. They were eliminated by the champions Italy, but he oversaw the rebuild, because it was the end of one generation, the start of the other. It was the end of Balak, Bierhoff, Oliver Kahn generation, and the beginning of Gotze, Cross, Ozil generation.
Right, and plus, Germany was still kind of finding itself again, because I mean, this is less than 20 years when West and East came back together. So the fact that Germany's come so strong after that is super impressive. Um, but in any case, I'm sure he could get the most out of this group possible, but you can't replace the lost development time. Um, Sedan, when I look at him and you look at what I saw what he's done at Real Madrid, um, maybe he, from a tactical standpoint, can get something out of these guys that we aren't seeing from Berhalter.
and maybe an advantage of Zinedine Zidane or any other coach that was in Europe, like Thomas Tuchel, Frank Lampard, Pochettino, or you know, or
I would like to
Graham Potter.
get Jason's thoughts on Lampard because I know he went to Chelsea.
Yeah,
So I wonder
but
how
but
he thinks he would fit in.
But the advantage of hiring one of those coaches is because now quite some, there's a fairly amount of players in the U.S. men's national team who play in Europe, so they're used to, you know, playing for coaches of a European style, like Zidane, like Lampard, like Tuchel. So probably then is a possibility. But for me, Brad Halter is done. He should not stay as a head coach. He was definitely. We talked about that before the Copa America even started. If he only will survive his job if he advanced. If he there was a fairly chance if he advanced to the knockout stage, which he didn't.
Right. And I think the next coach cannot, as you said, it cannot be American. Like, as backwards as it sounds, we cannot hire another American. It's got to be the European. Someone that knows how to win. We got to find a way to get some winning culture in the United States when it comes to soccer. Because unfortunately, if you promote from some dudes in the MLS, it's just not going to work. Like, I don't want another MLS coach roaming the sidelines of the U.S. men's national team.
And I'll say this, Nick. I think it has to be a coach who excites the at least the American soccer fan, or maybe get the average American sports fans a little bit excited about the World Cup. It has to be a coach that has some soccer history who make at least the fans were like, okay, we have a high profile coach with us, not a average American coach who can do a decent job. But if the World Cup was somewhere else, okay. But you're playing at home. You're playing at home on the biggest sports tournament in the world.
Yeah, I mean, and the U.S. Soccer Federation needs to be more open about their processes. I was reading something where, like, apparently we are handicapped by how much we could pay a potential men's coach because of an equity pay policy. So we can't pay a men's team coach more than a women's team coach, which just seems backwards to me. Like, I don't know if that's completely true or not, but if it is, we need to think about getting rid of that. But good luck doing that in soccer, at least in the United States. Um, but yeah, and of course, obviously, there's the pie in the sky, which
Oh,
ideas that. Go ahead.
because was because of 2022 decision that was U.S. soccer and women's players agreed to because of the I think that has to be connected with the lawsuit that was between the U.S. soccer federation and women players. Probably that
Oh
has
yeah, you're right. You're right.
probably that has something to do with it. I
Which is dumb
probably
because I'm not going to go down that road. I don't want to get myself canceled. But in any
yeah.
case, how are we supposed to compete in men's soccer and get top tier coaches if we're limiting ourselves on who we can pay? I mean, this is the United States. We should have the resources necessary to go and get any coach we want.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And, but even Brazil right now is, there were some pressure of getting a coach who is not Brazilian, but the Brazilian Soccer Federation still kind of wants to keep it local. Now, for example, Dorival Júnior. Before that was Fernando Diniz, Chichi. Trying to get the best coaches of Brazilian market who done a very good job in Brazilian clubs. But I think US has to figure out something. Of course, this kind of issue, of course, is going to be kind of hard to compete because, like, if you want to convince a high-profile coach to come, as we all know, for example, in NFL, college football, NBA, you have to pay more.
Right. And I don't think it's 100% on the coach either. The players, like Christian Pulisic, right? Like he's the star of this team. Yesterday, he only completed 15 of 25 of his passes and only had free shots. None of them were even close to producing any kind of threat. We're gonna need him to do more. And you've made this observation before, where if he's not on, then the U.S. had no offense.
Oh
And
yeah,
I don't
so
know if there's
I, I'm going to be honest. I only watched the friendly game against Brazil. I didn't watch the Copa American games. But from what I saw, that's what I felt.
right. And honestly, I was most impressed with Fuller and Balogun on this squad. He seemed to bring some energy there that maybe a better coach can really tap up because I'm tired of seeing guys like Weston McKinney out there, or Tyler Adams, just guys that are never going to truly compete for an um, international title. But at the same
Yeah,
time, we're only dealt with the players that we have because these are it's a national team. So it's unfortunate. It's not like college football where you can go out and get people out of the transfer portal and go out and sign better players. You're stuck with the players that
I
you have, and
I
maybe we're
mean
just screwed on this cycle.
I mean again, I'm gonna resurface what I proposed probably maybe a couple of years ago, and I'll go back to that again. There is another way to do it. Some countries did with soccer or even basketball. United States of America is a country everybody wants to live in or be, permanent resident or even a citizen. As we all know, there's probably
Right.
not another country in the world who has the biggest line or the biggest kind of, you know, willing for people to live there. So the U.S. Soccer Federation should use that, should really think about ways to naturalize good soccer players and try to convince great soccer players who are probably not used by their own countries to come here and play and give naturalization. And for example, Italy has done it, Spain has done it with Brazilians. Like in 2013, Spain naturalized uh, Diego Costa, which at the time was one of the best strikers in the world. Uh, so even high profile, even really good European nations did that. Why United States of America can't go that route?
Honestly, I don't hate it. I haven't really thought about doing that. I was jokingly telling someone earlier, man, it would be nice if we could just go and convince Mbappe to become an American citizen, so we can put him on our team. But I mean,
But but
that's
the but the
basically what we're
tricky
suggesting.
but the tricky situation, you would have to find a really good soccer player that has not played by their national team so far. Because, for example, Mbappe could not fit in because he already played for the French national team, or Messi because he played for the Argentinian national team. So you would have to find a really great soccer player that has not been used by their national team.
Right. Also, your father brings up actually a pretty interesting point. Why not a Brazilian coach for the Americans? I feel I don't. It'll be an interesting style mix, but I feel like the style of Brazilian soccer would not mesh as well with American soccer
I mean,
as.
I mean, one one coach I would think about is Tite. Has a very conservative kind of tactic. He's not like a offense guy. He's a defensive guy. He's trying to build great defense, and then great defense, try to score at least. Oh my God, what a chance Borges lost! Jesus Christ!
Oh my God, that was he had a wide open shot, and like the defender there for Brazil, what is he doing? He just
Oh my,
kicked it right to him,
oh yeah.
and
So
now we're gonna have another chance here, and oh, just over the post again, Bore.
Yeah, that's that one I saw. Bohe. Oh my. Uh,
Or Borge, yeah.
Yeah, what a chance he lost. Brazil trying to pass defense. We sometimes get those kind of troubles.
I mean,
But
they got to get some aggression on offense, man. They're getting. I mean, Colombia is
Neymar,
dominating possession right now.
Neymar, when you face a great team and you don't have the guy who connects and does the decisive factor like Neymar, then you can get in trouble like Brazil is having right now because Colombia is closer to scoring the second goal than Brazil is.
Yeah, honestly, low key, Colombia they could win this entire thing.
I'll
I mean,
I'll see there's a chance. It's a possibility. But back to my thing. Shout out to my dad, John Tomazeli, and our and Gus Nadia YouTube channel partner, Quantum Leap Partners, which helps Gus Nadia with a lot of stuff and our podcast too. So shout out. Why not a
shout
Brazilian
out to
coach?
them.
Why not a Brazilian coach? So right now, Brazilian coaches are not on their best, I'll say, generation. Um, I think the Brazilian coaches kind of peaked in the mid 2000s with, Luxemburgo going to Real Madrid, Felipão, with the Portugal national team and getting the team to the World Cup semifinals. Then he went on to coach at Chelsea in England. But right now, not even in our local market here in Brazil, the Brazilian um, coaches are kind of considered for big team hires. Only Tite, which was coaching for Brazil national team for several years, was considered for Flamengo. Like Palmeiras has a Portuguese coach. Corinthians literally fire a Portuguese coach. Botafogo has a Portuguese coach. Vasco was also had not long ago a Portuguese coach. Uh, Red Bull Bragantino has a Portuguese coach. So even Brazil right now is under a lot of Portuguese coaching influence. But I'll say this: like, Tite is a good choice. I think he was even considering coaching a national team before accepting the Flamengo job. Of course, he was the whole way expecting a European nation hire, but I would go after Tite. He he did not win the World Cups in 2018 and 2022, but he is a great coach and he plays conservative, which I think would be good for US.
I could totally see that. Anything but what I've been seeing. We need some energy. We need some juice to at least motivate the fan base, motivate our players, put some faith back in the U.S.
Or
Soccer Federation.
another option I'll go with. Why not Alexi Lawless? He is probably the most recognizable kind of soccer star right now, even though he does not play anymore. He's been very kind of vocal, kind of being the ambassador of U.S. soccer. Why not him? Why?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, obviously, you look at him on Twitter, for example. Um, he can tend to be very outspoken, which obviously has the First Amendment right to do so. But when you're trying to coalesce a fan base around him, right? And not to stereotype, I don't want to get down a political road here, but a lot of soccer fans in the U.S. tend to lean one way that I don't know if they would be thrilled with that hire and could cause even more discord uh, within U.S. soccer fandom that already exists. So,
Or maybe another other former players like London Donovan or Clint Dempsey, maybe.
yeah, as I said, I would just rather have a European or even a Brazilian over any of them. Like, we need folks that know what it's like to be around champion national winning teams or champion high level, European soccer teams. And unfortunately, when you look at like a Landon Donovan and Clint Dempsey, I mean, these guys play in the MLS. And I just don't think from a tactical standpoint, from a motivational standpoint, um, I wouldn't expect to see anything better in 2026 with them. So, and at this point, obviously, it's going to be a weird format with the 48 teams. Um, Well, what should be the goal for the U.S. in 2 years? Is it just bare minimum get out of the group stage? Is it to win a knockout game? Like, what
Uh,
is
ba-
success right now?
bare minimum, advancing the group stage would be like a okay. You did not get humiliated. Then when you go to the group, the knockout stage, then if you advance to the quarterfinals, then you did a goodish job. If you went to the third round, the round of 16, the round of 16. But if you went to the quarterfinals, then okay, impressive.
I mean, tie for
Semifinals,
best result ever.
yeah, then it would be a great result. Like semifinals, great, amazing. Anything above that, great, amazing. But
Yeah,
advancing the group stage, bare minimum.
bare
Playing
minimum,
home.
guys. Y'all have 2 years to figure this out because if we fail in 2026, then it's not just a loss in 2026. It could be a loss for a whole generation of American soccer. So pressure's on, boys. That's all I gotta say. Get yourselves together. We can do it. We are the United States. We are America. God
Like
bless the United States.
and again, United States of America has 330 million people. I know the argument kind of it's weird because like of course India has a billion, China has more than a billion. They didn't don't have good national teams, but the US has a multicultural population that really likes sports and soccer is probably on the top 5. So there has to be at least 11 players who can get the job done.
Has to be. There has to be. All right. Enough about them. As Brazil and Colombia go into stoppage time, tied at one, both will advance to the knockout stage. All right, let's talk some basketball, some NBA here. NBA draft was last week, and of course, number one thing I was interested in, Dalton Connect. Where would he land? He kind of fell a bit. I thought he would go top 10, um, but he fell all the way to 17, where he's going to go nowhere else but the Los Angeles Lakers to play with LeBron and AD. I low-key love this move. That's a team that's probably LeBron's last year. They're going to try to do as much as they can this year. And Dog Connect, I think, should play a pretty sizable role in that roster.
Oh yeah, I was happy that he was drafted of a team who, of course, not in their prime, but is not a bottom team. So again, falling into the draft is not a bad thing because think about it: the teams who draft on the top are not usually the best run or they're doing good. Of course, there are some exceptions. For example, the San Antonio Spurs. I think they're going to rebuild. They're going to be a better team than they were a couple of years ago. But I think he's gonna do a good job in as a Laker.
Yeah, of course, obviously the main concern with him is his defense is not fantastic. And the Lakers didn't have a good defense last year either, so maybe not an
Uh,
ideal fit from that standpoint. But
One, do you saw that meme? I should have sent you, like, for example, joking that if Dalton Connect was Serbian or from Europe, his evaluation would have been different. Then he would have been
yeah,
much more praised than he is.
yeah, and then that's the next thing I wanted to get into here. Um, are the French this much better than us at basketball right now in terms of development? I mean, the top two picks: Zachary Richard, Alex Sarr. You had a Tidjane Saloon. You had Matas Buzelis, Nikola Topic, all in the top 12. I mean, it's pretty wild to think about how bad AAU culture is destroying American basketball right now.
I mean, because I think it's because those all those names that you mentioned, they're playing professional basketball in Europe. So of course you want to draft players who already have some professional experience comparing to college kids.
Oh, true. I mean, the highest rated college guy was Reed Shepard, who wasn't even a starter at Kentucky, which is pretty wild. Of course, Stefan Castle off the national title Kentucky team. Yeah, our Connecticut rather. You had Donovan Clingan go to Portland. Rob Dillingham. And then the most curious pick here, Zach Edey to Memphis. Granted, they needed a center, but man, this was a rough one because obviously this is a Tennessee-based team in Memphis drafting a guy who has become universally hated across the entire state of Tennessee, basically. Um,
But you know that Memphis is not that connected to like the East Central Tennessee, and is even more connected to Miss Arkansas.
that is true. That is certainly true. A lot of people in Memphis hate Tennessee basketball, so I
Yeah,
get it. I still don't think Zach Edey is going to be a good pro. I'm going to go on record to say that. I think his game is limited. I think he is a traditional center and a post-traditional center NBA. But hey, we'll see how that works for Memphis. But I'm all aboard the Lake Show. I'm supporting my guy,
yeah.
Dalton Connect. But I
Sh-
will say this. Go ahead.
No, I mean, just quick shout out. After Connect was drafted, a Brazilian German was drafted. Tristan da Silva that was playing for the Colorado Buffaloes. So shout out to him, another Brazilian into the NBA.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think the single most interesting pick to me here, Rob Dillingham to Kentucky. I think Dillingham has a chance to be maybe one of the better all-around players out of this particular draft. I think his skill set could pair perfectly with Wimbenyana. I'm really excited to see that duo in San Antonio. Actually, wait, hold on. He got traded to Minnesota, um, which of course him and Anthony Edwards could also be a very electric duo. I think Dillingham has a very high ceiling in this particular draft because I mean this draft overall maybe doesn't have the highest ceilings. Maybe not like last year's draft or the year before last. But I think there are some good players here who are going to find some big roles down the line in the NBA. So
Yeah,
also shout out
another.
to Josiah Jordan James as well, undrafted free agent to Indiana.
There was another draft pick who made quite a big impact in late second round. I'll say that.
Oh yeah, Bronny to the Lakers, and wow, are we all shocked? LeBron, the GM, drafted his own son. I mean,
Oh,
should I mean obviously
for
we've never really seen this
to the
situation
surprise of
before.
no one. To the surprise of no one.
Should this even be allowed? Like, isn't this
But
just
what
nepotism?
rules he be broken? What rules is he broken?
Well, you're right. I guess he hasn't breaking any rules, and it's not like it's very often that a dad gets to play with his son in the NBA.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you know that he made big lobby for that. He was like, "Hey, I'm almost retired." He probably say, "Hey, I made this far to for the dream of playing with my son." You have this late second round pick that you got from the Clippers. Draft a guy, and because you please LeBron, and LeBron will be motivated to play for at least 1 or 2 years with his son. It was a draft to motivate LeBron.
Yeah, and LeBron's still playing good enough to justify it, but Bronny isn't going to be in the league past 3 or 4 years. Let's be completely
No,
honest. But
yeah,
hey,
yeah,
at least the Lakers' other draft pick was really good. So I'll just I'll give
yeah.
him credit on that. But
I, I,
hopefully Dalton Connect can ignore the circus. And we really didn't talk about this last episode because I forgot to put it in. But JJ Redick as head coach is an interesting decision. Um, I don't know how that's going to work. LeBron's former podcast buddy being his coach now, which I mean, do you think LeBron's going to really sit around and listen to JJ Redick? No.
but Nick, since LeBron James came to the NBA, probably only in Miami he could not made that influence. But in Cleveland and now in LA, that he kind of acts and you said yourself, he acts as a GM, so he picks a head coach who kind of, is more willing to accept his interferences.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's the GM and the head coach. And when he retires, the Lakers are going to be set way, way back. Way
Yeah,
back. So,
like
enjoy
like
this year, Lakers fans.
yeah, like it's like asking the Cleveland Cavalier fans after he left what happened. It's literally the same story both times.
Oh, for sure. Um, Speaking of obviously NBA, of course, we're free agency now, and frankly, this is the most exciting time of the year for the NBA. It's free agency. It's the one sport where its off season is more entertaining than the actual season. Um, Maybe not this year though as much. I mean, the biggest move so far: Paul George to the 76ers, a perennial choker player in Paul George, going to a perennial choker franchise in Philadelphia. Perfect fit. They're not. I mean, do we really think that Paul George or Joel Embiid is going to change anything? No.
I mean, but they had to get a splash signing because they're running out of time with this trust the process generation. So
Yeah.
they had to make it work, or else then you would have to restart again you know
Yeah, I mean, and the thing about it is Boston is just so good in the East right now. The Sixers would need a Herculean effort to overcome them. And it wasn't like they were even the great. I mean, they were the 7th seed this year. So um, I I'm not high on Philadelphia's chances, to say the least, with Paul George. Um, Same to be said. Curious signing here: Clay Thompson to the Mavs. First and foremost, rip the Splash Brothers in Golden State. Legendary duo, one of the most legendary duos of all time. I mean, where does Clay Thompson and Steph Curry rank among all-time NBA duos? Because you got Shaq and Kobe,
second.
probably.
Maybe tied with second with Kobe and Shaq.
Yeah, because you got Jordan Pippen, Kobe and Shaq, of course Wade and LeBron when they were together.
But there was more like a trio with Chris Bosh.
Yeah, okay, Chris Bosh was really good, but Wade and LeBron are who people remember. People don't remember about Chris Bosh, in my
Yeah, that's
opinion.
fair.
Yeah, Wade. I put Wade and LeBron over them, but like they're probably like fourth. I put them over Katie and Westbrook and OKC. But I mean,
I wouldn't
legendary
put
duo.
I wouldn't put that because all the four duels won NBA titles. KD and Westbrook did not.
Exactly. Um, but yeah, obviously, I mean, those two revolutionized the game in terms of their 3-point shooting. However, Klay Thompson is a shell of his former self after all the injuries, I mean, and age. And I just don't really see how he's supposed to help Dallas get over the hump here because Dallas's weakness is defense. And Clay, I don't think is necessarily an amazing defender. He doesn't give you the 3-point shooting that you used to. And granted, you got Luca anyway, so it's not like you need the scoring, but you need someone who's going to bring in tenacious defense. I just don't think Clay Thompson's that guy.
Yeah, he's trying probably it's going to be his last contract in the NBA. Of course, he's not the same player a- as before 2019 because that injury in the NBA Finals set his career back.
Oh yeah. Other big one here, of course, reverting back to a previous sign, James Harden will return to the Los Angeles Clippers. And to be fair to Harden, he played decently well in this playoffs, but we all know the story with Harden. Just can't get it done in the playoffs, and additionally, can't the Los Angeles Clippers still cannot get it done as they prepare to move into a new arena.
Yeah, and the Clippers had to find a new star to replace their star. It's so funny. Like we talk about duels, how we evaluate uh, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard in
Failure.
failure, failure, failure.
I mean, they weren't even close to winning a championship. Kawhi, I mean, if Kawhi Leonard hadn't had his run with the Spurs and the miracle season in Toronto, I mean, we would not regard him in high esteem at all. Because outside of 2013, 14, and 19, what has Kawhi Leonard done?
He likes low management, that's for sure.
Yeah, he doesn't like playing basketball very much. Um, outside of those particular seasons.
Yeah, but I think go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, but yeah. So just the Clippers, nowhere close to title contenders, even as they move to Inglewood. Chris Paul, speaking of former Clipper and moving on from the Phoenix Suns, another failure of a franchise. Um, he's going to San Antonio. Probably, I would honestly imagine this has to be close to his last contract too. He's going to pair up with Wemby. I mean, are the Spurs anywhere close to playoff contention in a really tough West yet? I don't know.
Maybe
Yeah,
maybe with that, that acquisition, the free agency, they can at least dream of getting to the playing tournament.
maybe. I think that might be the goal there. Of course, Wemby, of course, is going to continue to absolutely grow and dominate, but they got to get him some pieces for sure. Um, and then the last thing I want to get to here, Jason Tatum signed a 6-year, $341 million contract, which is wildly pay out. First and foremost, I don't really know if Jason Tatum's worth that. I know they just won the championship, but like, is Jason Tatum really worth over $400 million?
Ah, but it's hard to negotiate. Like the it's hard to negotiate a new contract when you're the star of a championship team because you have all the leverage.
That's true. And the Celtics right now, when you look at their starting lineup, they're due to pay over $1 billion over the next 6 years. And their owners just announced today that they're selling the team right after winning a championship. I don't know if this is sustainable long term for Boston
Oh yeah,
because they're going to have to sell some of these players, trade them away for financial reasons. So they better go ahead and try to get a free P here because I just don't know how you're going to afford all this.
at least they got their pressure out their back, But that's why the owners want to sell because we got our title. We accomplished the mission. Now off to someone else.
Yeah. And the Bucks had an owner who did the same thing a few years ago after their championship. But anyway, that's some of the big moments so far. And of course, we'll see how NBA free agency continues to develop over the next couple of days. Also, NHL having their draft and free agency. And the one note I really want to talk about here, obviously I'm not as much into hockey. We need to get Dylan Becker back on to talk about all this. The Predators, though, are going all in because they signed the Steven Stamkos of the Tampa Bay Lightning and Jonathan Marchalt. Two very, very talented players, especially Stamkos. Stamkos has been the star of Tampa Bay for years now and has led them to 2 Stanley Cups. And they really just spent a lot of money in free agency, which is unusual for Nashville. Nashville usually has one of the lowest payrolls in the NHL. They usually don't have the resources to compete, but they're going all in. And it should be very interesting to see if these guys can. You have to remember this past year they lost in the first round to Vancouver, and we're kind of chokers in doing so. But maybe Nashville can make a deep run again. They haven't made a deep run now in half a decade. Of course, in the late 2010s they were awesome and made the Stanley Cup Finals once. So I would love to see the Preds get back at it.
Yeah, that's true. I think that historical run was, cannot capitalize with the Stanley Cup trophy, but I think they're trying to get back to that level.
Oh, absolutely. All right. Do you want to talk about some college football here?
Of
First,
course, let's do it.
absolutely. First and foremost, welcome to the new era officially of college football. Texas and Oklahoma are officially now in the SEC. Can't see my horns down there. There we go. See, there we go. Welcome to the SEC. Texas and Oklahoma. And get used to that. You'll see a lot of it. And unlike the Big 12, we will not penalize people for doing so. But and then also the Pac-12 is officially dead today. If you go to their website, there's just Oregon State and Washington State.
Yeah, I saw that. It felt pitiful. It felt. I don't even know what to say.
I know it's crazy. We're literally down to 4 conferences now. Officially, Oregon, USC, UCLA, and Washington don't join the Big Ten until next month. But so they're technically conference list for like a whole month, which is really weird. But not like it matters.
So if they had to play football in the month of July, they would be independent.
Yeah, which is really weird. But of course, they'll be in the Big Ten starting next month. Stanford, Cal, and SMU now are also officially in the ACC, and the Big 12 has all of their teams: the Colorado, the Arizona schools, and Utah.
But it's so funny. Like I don't remember. So there were schools that joined the Big 12 this year, like this for the 2024.
Yes, Colorado, Utah, Arizona State.
But if you go to social. But if you compare it to social media, if you go to the SEC Instagram, you see all promos, all videos, all hype for Texas and Oklahoma joining in. But if you go to the Big 12 Instagram page that they just left, don't have anything. It feels nothing. Like it only has promotions for the Big 12 football media days, rankings and stuff. It not anything related to new teams joining the conference.
Well, let's be realistic here. Colorado, Utah, and the Arizona schools' collective fan bases don't rival Texas or Oklahoma. That's what that comes down to.
But at least promo like they are, like at least Colorado was a hype. They have they have double oh my god, they have an exciting coach. They had a lot of juice. I don't know, but at least show in your Instagram new schools joining in, but they felt like completely ignored.
Oh, absolutely. It really doesn't make any sense when you take a look at it on a but hey, that's why the SEC is the SEC, and these other conferences are nowhere near as good.
At least the ACC made a post welcoming Cal, SMU, and Stanford. At least they made a post. At least the commissioner made a video welcoming them. At least the Big 12 cannot even do that.
Yeah. Goes to show. It's the Big 12 next on the chopping block.
Yeah.
And what's also interesting too, so the video game that's coming up, EA Sports' College Sports 25, revealed their team ratings for top 25 overall teams, top 25 offense, top 25 defense, and it is beyond ridiculous. So I'm going to share these with you real quick because it might be some of the worst rankings I've ever seen. So obviously number 1 overall. So these are top 10 offenses. So you can see Georgia, Oregon, Alabama, Texas, Ohio State, LSU, Miami, Colorado at 8.
Hype, totally hyped. Probably when
they have 2 good players on their offense.
I know.
You have Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, who has to share time with defense. They have no offensive line, no running backs. And you're telling me they're 89 overall? Okay. So you have Missouri, Clemson with Clyde Klubnik and no transfer portal additions, 87. Utah, Penn State, Ole Miss, Kansas, Arizona, NC State, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Memphis, SMU, UCF, Florida State, Oklahoma, Virginia Tech, USC. Do you notice who's not there?
The Tennessee Volunteers. Jesus
With
Christ.
Josh Heupel and a 5-star quarterback?
And you have Texas A&M who literally are in the tire fire and still dealing with a coach disaster as Jimbo Fisher.
And freaking Memphis is in there? Memphis has a better offense than Tennessee. Virginia Tech has a better offense than Tennessee.
Former Josh Heupel's team is in there.
Yeah. And here's your defenses. Ohio State's number 1. Colorado's at 20.
Hype.
Colorado gave up 40 points a game last year.
I tell you, Nick, that hype last year played a role in that.
Yeah. So, and also Tennessee not in there, although I could forgive you there with our secondary. But front 7 should over at least over Colorado. And then here's your top 25 teams overall. Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Bama, Texas, Clemson. Clemson's the 6th best team in the country right now. How? Notre Dame, LSU, Penn State, Utah, Michigan, Florida State, Miami, 13th. The Miami that went 7-5 last year. Okay. Texas A&M, Ole Miss. Colorado's number 16. Freaking ridiculous. Oklahoma, Wisconsin, USC. Virginia Tech's at 87 overall. Virginia Tech lost to Marshall last year. And Rutgers.
Maybe because of the quarterback.
NC State, Kansas, Arizona, Oklahoma State. Yeah, Oklahoma State who lost to South Alabama by 26. You're telling me they're 87? Iowa. We saw them in person get shut out.
If Iowa's offense were in that ranking, then it would be like grounds for firing somebody there.
Yeah, because Iowa's 13 overall on defense, and they're not in the top 25 on offense. Tennessee, you cannot tell me that Tennessee doesn't have a top 25 overall roster in this country. I would argue that Tennessee has a top 10 roster in this country. This is an absolute joke of a ranking. And if I'm Josh Heupel and staff, I am plastering those rankings around the locker room and saying, hey, these people don't think you have a good roster at all.
As Nick Saban said better, this is rat poison.
Yeah, it's yummy rat poison.
Yeah, it's yummy rat poison.
Very, very yummy rat poison. It's ridiculous. I was just appalled when I saw that. I'm so excited for that game. I still gotta just want to buy a PS5, but man, their rankings are garbage, to say the least. Maybe we should have paid to put Nico on the cover. Maybe they would have fairly rated us. But in any case, 2 other quick notes. Kansas State got a 5-star receiver in recruiting, which is nuts. Tennessee's also been doing pretty well in recruiting. They're up in the top 10 right now for next year. Now, last check, they were up at number 9. So recruiting going hard right now. And unfortunately, in some rather bad news, Utah State had to fire their coach, Blake Anderson, due to a Title IX investigation after 3 players were found to be sexual assaulters, and they didn't handle it correctly, to say the least. So unfortunate, because Utah State was pretty good last year. They were 11-3. Could have made a run at that G5 spot for the playoffs this year. That offseason turmoil, I think that's going to It's going to really put a wrench in those plans. So real quick, college baseball with some quick notes there. Of course, we're still basking in the glow of our national championship. Baseballs. We staved off a attempt by Texas A&M to steal Tony Vitello after, of course, Texas stole their coach. They attempted to come after Tony Vitello, but Tony V told them no, and they had to promote their hitting coach to the head coach, Michael Early. He is trying to keep up with the players. A lot of the players went to the portal. Some of them went to Texas. We're trying to get some of them. We are working to get some of their players, and we've gotten some other players. We got a dude from Kennesaw State who can throw 100 miles an hour. So Tennessee baseball should be loaded once again next year. So definitely excited. We'll see if it's, of course, it's near impossible to go back to back in college baseball. But hey, if anyone could do it, why not Tony Vitello and the Tennessee Baseball Volunteers?
Yeah.
The last thing I want to talk about, National Cup race. I was there on Sunday in brutally hot weather. It was like 100 degrees out there. And then we had a storm. So we were sitting under the bleachers for like 2 hours while the storm came through. We waited on the track to be redried. The race lasted like 6 hours. It went to 5 overtimes. Really weird race. Joey Logano ended up winning. Christopher Bell should have won, but then he got wrecked. And then Ross Chastain should have won, but then he got wrecked. And Hamlin should have won. Then he ran out of gas. It was a nutty race to watch, but I had so much fun watching it.
Oh yeah, from the videos they posted were very exciting.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And of course, if you're in America, go see a NASCAR race. Super fun. This week they're at the Chicago Street Race in downtown Chicago. Super excited. Last year was awesome when Shane Van Gisbergen came out nowhere to win. So we'll see if it can live up to that hype once again. But that's all the time we have tonight for Two Countries, Two Americas, All Sports, episode 137. For Gustavo Tomazeli in Americana, Sao Paulo, Brazil, I'm Nick Hill in Chattanooga, Tennessee, United States. And you're listening to the only American and Brazilian sports podcast. Have a great night and have a safe